Welcome to this week's episode of Coffee with a Journalist, brought to you by the team at One Pitch. Are you looking for a more efficient way to find and pitch the right journalists? Head over to our website at onepitch.co to learn more. On today's episode of Coffee with a Journalist, our guest is Kia Kokalitcheva, the senior editor of VC News at Pitchbook. Broadcasting live from San Francisco, Kia shares her insights on Pitchbook's focus, the power of data-driven journalism, and her approach to managing an inbox full of pitches. As a seasoned journalist with experience at Axios and Fortune, Kia discusses her criteria she considers when evaluating funding announcements and offers guidance on how publicists can effectively engage with her team. Grab your morning coffee and enjoy.
Welcome, everyone. This is Coffee with a Journalist. We are in the rooms, as we could see. I'm Beck Bamberger. We are doing this show because we want publicists to know and better understand how to work with our fabulous journalists, freelancers, editors, people who make the media world go round, because it is a crazy time, and world in general. Let's just say that. And with us today, coming live from San Francisco, how exciting, in her own version of a podcast recording room, let's say, is a senior editor of VC News at Pitchbook, recently at Axios, but now she's at Pitchbook. We have lots of things to talk about. Kia, I love the alliteration of your name. It's like mine with Beck Bamberger. So it's Kia Kokalitcheva. Yes? Did I get it? Yes, I did? Okay, good. It's fun. Kia, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here and chat.
So you haven't even been there for a month yet. Your inbox isn't too crazy. You were just telling me. But you have lived in other existences in media where it has been. So first, before we get into all of that, tell us a bit on Pitchbook's arena of focus and how that is. Well, what's Pitchbook up to these days, for those who may not know?
Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of folks know Pitchbook's wonderful database products, all the data, the insights, all of that good stuff that people in the deal-making world love to access and use in their, in their daily jobs. But there's also a news team that's editorially independent, and we look at things through a deal-making lens. So we're not going to cover, product updates or any of that kind of stuff. Although we do want to, just be in the know for general background information. But we're very much, our audience are people in the deal-making industry. So VCs, PE investors, institutional investors, a lot of the service providers that they work with, like lawyers and accountants and all these people that help those deals happen, corporate teams, corp dev and all that good stuff. So it's a lot of those people they're the customers of the data and also the audience. So we write things that will help them in their job. So that's how we think of the coverage lens. And then within that, we do have a focus on VC, on private equity. We have the US team, and then we also have folks in London who are taking care of Europe and some other regions. And our audience is global. We have over 2 million newsletter subscribers. We have a few newsletter products as well.
Wow, I didn't know it was up to 2 million. Impressive.
Yeah. And none of the news content or newsletters are paywall, which is also a thing that people get a little bit confused about, because they think of, I have to subscribe to access the data products. But news content is free for anyone to read. So
very refreshing. Very good. Very good. Okay, that was a good primer on Kia. And I increasingly want us to be featuring and focusing on people that are, they're coming from maybe a data source or a platform, but then there's a whole news team and stuff, because that's how some news is evolving and still is just as important to get editorial coverage. So very important. Your inbox, you told me it's kind of dry and Spartan right now. But when you were at previous places, well, actually, okay, you just gave me that look. So are you already getting blown up with bad pitches, I hate to say?
No, I'm just getting a lot of press releases right now, which is totally fine. We have a bunch of group distribution lists, which is totally fine. We love the press releases, so we know what's happening, the action. But it's still early in my getting, direct pitches to me so far.
Are you a little on the edge of your seat, or how are you feeling?
I'm so busy that I'm not really thinking
you're
about my inbox.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll come.
Okay. Previously, when you were, let's say, at Fortune, you were at Axios, how did you even manage what I imagine was a chaotic inbox?
Yeah, they were chaotic inboxes for sure. I never had like assistants or anything like that. So it's just me and my
You
inbox
didn't, Kia?
every
You
day.
didn't have
I
an
know, right?
assistant? Oh my gosh. There's never been a media person on here who's like, my assistant would go through. No, actually, I would lose my shit if I heard a journalist say like, well, my assistant. Maybe there's AI ones coming, but anyway, no.
Maybe.
You didn't have,
Maybe. I would love for AI to birth us, email assistants. But yeah, so like it was me in my inbox every day trying to get through the madness. And so that really means that attention span is very short. And just reading through subject lines and trying to triage, like, is this just a blasted press release? Is this a pitch about something that I might care about and I want to read it? Is this some sort of newsletter? Like you really are just like triaging and parsing really quickly. So as I'm sure subject line is really important because I really have like half a second to realize, do I want to read this email or not?
Yes. Do you recall what subject lines would stand out to you specifically?
Mm-hmm. So this is kind of a specific thing to my jobs, which were often focused on funding news, and especially at Axios, helping with the Pro Rata newsletter. So anytime I would see funding news and a date or something like that with like clear keywords that tell me, or, M&A news, anything that gave me those clear keywords of like, oh, this is something I need to open and care about and maybe forward to a colleague or do something with this email, I always like made sure to focus on those. Anything that was like super vague, I was like, okay, later, I will come back and think about it later. But I was always prioritizing.
It's super vague. What are you going to do with that? Like, you don't have bandwidth, even time to look at the vague and be like, well, let me try to parse this out. Like, what are they trying to say? Right.
I mean, maybe at some point, maybe over lunch, I'll like go back and read through it. But, you're getting constant emails and you see those keywords like embargoed funding news next Monday. You're like, yes, let's click on that and do something.
Okay. So right now you're kind of free and clear. You have that. What would you like to see? What would be a pitch you like, since it's open access? It's open enrollment right now, Kia.
Obviously, we're writing for a deal-making audience, right? So if you're an investor or if you're a company and you've got deal news coming up, definitely come to us. We'd love to take a look. If you want to get a coffee with me and tell me about your perspective on the market or, some juicy tips or gossip about the market, I am happy to take those emails for sure. We're putting a lot of emphasis on like analysis and insights for our readers. So looking at trends in the asset classes and the industries and different sectors, that stuff is really, really interesting. I mean, it's interesting to everybody in my world, all my peers at other news organizations, but it's definitely interesting for us. We have a huge amount of data. So if someone's like, hey, this is happening in the late stage funding environment, like we have so much data to put with that and showcase a trend.
Okay, so let's get into that a little bit, because you have this beautiful, phenomenal global platform of data that's top of the world, we could argue. How does that change and give you firepower for the coverage you do? Because not everybody has that.
Yeah.
And I know you just got there, but what would you say?
Yeah. No. So obviously, even before I was at Pitchbook, I would lean on their data all the time. I mean, that's even how I ended up here, because I had relationships.
You're like, I know how to use the whole platform. Yeah.
Yeah. And their data was just like so useful and wonderful. And I use it all the time in my coverage. And then here, I'm now on the inside. So I have even more access to not only the data, but their stable of analysts on all the topics. I can literally Slack them and ask a question about a trend that I'm thinking about. And so we're definitely trying to lean into the fact that we're part of a data company. We have so many tools and access to resources on the data front. So we're definitely trying to showcase that in our work as much as possible, like lean into the data first, the data driven type of work. Yeah, it is like a big piece of how we think about covering these asset classes.
What an excellent sleigh that you get to have.
Today's interview will continue after this brief message brought to you by OnePitch. Are you curious to learn about the unique ways OnePitch helps brands engage with the right journalists? Head to onepitch.co and create your own custom media list in 5 minutes or less. Now back to today's episode.
Is there something, just to be very clear about it, Kia, that you please do not send me? I know you could say like consumer packaged goods stuff, like that type of like obvious ones, but something maybe just to illuminate further. For example, no, I do not want to hear any thought leaders on your crypto bets of the year. I don't know.
Well, so the funny thing is, if you are a CPG company and you are maybe getting acquired by a private equity firm,
well, then yes,
I want to hear about that.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely like product related things. If your startup is updating their product or launching a new product, I'm sure it's great and fantastic. And maybe I'll even be a user personally, but it is not something we would ever cover. It can be good background information about a company. If we're writing about, they're merging with this other company, and then look at all the new products they've launched in the last 5 quarters and how that plays into why it's a valuable merger and these things, that's great background information, but we're not going to be writing a story about your product update or something that for sure. And then same thing, on the personnel front, personnel, when it comes to the deal makers, definitely interested, a new managing partner somewhere, a new head of corporate development at a company, definitely interested. A startup hiring a new head of engineering, probably not. That's just not in our realm of coverage. So,
You touched on it earlier. When you want to get a coffee with me, you want to sit down, you want to tell me kind of deals, and you're based in San Francisco. Tell us how you want to look at your relationship building in 2025 with publicists specifically. And then we can expand it from there, with these, who else you want to have relationships with.
Yeah, I definitely want folks to think of us, so to speak, as very much the way that they think of more traditional newsrooms, because we really are a newsroom. We're small, but we're mighty. And so I'm happy to help folks better understand things about our various newsletters or different reporters, things like that. I'm happy to answer any and all questions. Give us an early look on news. We may not always take up embargoed news, but we'd love to see it. And also just connecting us to your really smart, interesting clients who are in the middle of the action and really know their particular corner of the world. Because they're really the people, I'm not a VC. So I really rely on the actual VCs to tell me what's going on in their job. So yeah, and I know folks like yourself work with a lot of those investors and decision makers. So just send them our way.
Send them your way. How refreshing to hear. Send them our way. That's good. Do you, Kia, want to be invited to I'm going to go to a dinner, or I'll go to your conference, or I'll go to let me moderate that? How out and about do you wish to be?
Probably as out and about as I've been historically. I love a good press dinner with some interesting folks. It's always such a great way to meet a lot of people at once over dinner. If you're a venture firm and you want to have a few of your partners and a few of your portfolio CEOs or founders over dinner, that's great always. Conferences and events, I'm probably going to be a little bit more selective just because I have kind of a full additional flurry of things to do at the office every day now. But still, I definitely want to be out in the field and meeting people and making sure I'm still in the know. And the same applies to the reporters in our newsroom. They want to be out there seeing what's happening, talking to people. So definitely invite the correct reporters and editors to all of your events. I still absolutely love moderating. It's a different format of journalism. So I love doing that. Yeah, kind of pretty much the same as I used to be. I might just take on a little bit less than I used to.
A little more discerning is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
You need to be. We all need to be more and more, in my opinion. Okay, we have a couple of audience. I have two. I got an audience ask. Okay, this is Kia. When we tell our pitch posse that we have so-and-so reporter coming on. They go, oh, this is my question. So here's the question for you from Anonymous. These are anonymous. When covering funding announcements, what are the most important elements you look for when considering a story? Is it the dollar amount, the brand founder story, the name of the leading investor, etc.?
I would say it's more of an art than a science. I think here we probably wouldn't even look at something under, let's say, 10 million of a funding round size, unless there is some sort of really notable thing about the founder or the lead investor. But by and large, we'll stay above 10 million and probably even higher than that in terms of writing standalone stories. Our newsletters do kind of collect a lot of the deal news. And so that's been our standard so far, 10 million. Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's more of an art than a science. A lot of it is sort of like, what are people going to be talking about? What are like essential deal news, right? So if it is like an AI company, right now everyone is so interested in these things and wants to know about these companies and all these investments. So we'll probably put a higher premium on that than a topic that's just kind of less sought after by our readers.
Okay, good to know. Another audience ask here, do you prefer embargo or exclusive opportunities when covering VC funding? And if so, how much time do you want to have to write your story ahead of time before the news is public? Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, exclusive is always the best,
Always
right?
the best.
I think pretty much any reporter would tell you that. Exclusive is always the best. But, if you guys are doing an embargo with some other outlets, do reach out, send them our way. We'll take a look. We'll figure out if it's a good fit. So don't be shy about that. And then in terms of lead time, I would say a week is probably a good rule of thumb because it gives you enough wiggle room to set up interviews, all the interviews you need for a particular story, and like people's schedules might not align. It gives the reporter time to actually write the story, work with the editor, all that stuff. So I would say reach out about a week ahead of time.
Okay.
That's probably like a good rule of thumb, I would say. Some reporters, some individual reporters out there might have slightly different preferences, but I would say that's kind of a good place to start for these things. And then in terms of, if it is embargo news and we end up passing on, wanting to write like a whole standalone story about this, or you don't hear from us, circle back the day before because that's when we're, figuring out the next day's newsletter and what should be included in the deal sections. So yeah, circle back the day before.
Okay. Circle back. Kia, I have a handful of rapid fire questions that are just quick to go for. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Video or phone interview?
Probably phone if it's like an actual, like I'm interviewing you for a story because that way I don't have to feel bad that I'm looking at my keyboard or something else while I'm on Zoom with the person. But if it's like a more of a meet and greet and I'm not actually interviewing you formally, then Zoom could be good.
Okay. Bullet points or paragraphs in a pitch?
Oh, you shouldn't even really be having paragraphs.
No,
so I'll take
I know. I think we got to
points.
revise this. Yeah, exactly. Images attached or Dropbox zip file?
Oh, attached. Oh God, do not make me click and go and open things.
I do not want to ever click anywhere to
No.
something else. I'm with you. Okay. Do you just want email or will you take a DM from somewhere?
I prefer email personally. I prefer to stick to chatting directly with founders and investors and other platforms. If we're having PR business, email is my preferred method so that I can keep those things organized.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm just going to like drop things. Like I'm going to forget, I'm thinking about the schedule, like what news is coming up, all this kind of stuff. And like, if you DM me this press release, I am not thinking about it. So you lose.
Do you want one follow-up or multiple?
I think
mentioned the one, right before.
I think one is kind of a max. I personally read nearly everything in my inbox. So if you didn't hear back from me, it means I'm just not interested. But I understand one follow-up. I do sometimes get distracted. So a follow-up makes sense, especially if maybe you realize that you didn't include something that might be interesting and you want to follow up with that information. But anything more than that, I've seen it and I'm just not interested.
Direct or creative subject lines?
Direct. I'm parsing quickly. I'm triaging.
Yep.
I don't want to sit there and, look at a riddle.
Yep. Not at your lunch break either. No. Press release or media kit?
Oh, I mean, if by media kit, you mean it has, a bunch of other assets, sure.
Okay.
But, if you just paste the press release in the email, for me, press releases are really just a cheat sheet, right? Like it tells me the names of the companies and investors, the numbers I need to include. Like it's a cheat sheet. You could really just send me bullet points of that information if you want to.
I've thought about that. Yeah. You don't need to make it.
And I'm probably not going to need like 5 B-roll reels and all that kind of stuff. So, don't stress about it.
Is there a time you read pitches?
All day.
All day. All the time?
Yeah, all day.
Yeah, great. Perfect. Kia, is there anything we could do to promote, celebrate, highlight you?
I mean, definitely subscribe to our newsletters, whichever ones fit your interests, your work, your clients. Browse our content on our website. Follow us on social media platforms.
Okay.
I know we're going to start to really tweet and post our work a lot more. So keep up with our work, basically.
Keep up with the work, everybody. Kia, thank you so much for being on today. Everyone, this is Kia Kokalitcheva, Senior Editor of VC News from Pitchbook. See her articles because they're free. They're not behind the paywall, right? See, look at that. Look at that, everybody. Thanks, Kia. Good seeing you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Coffee with a Journalist featuring Kia Kokalitcheva, the Senior Editor of VC News at Pitchbook. For more exclusive insights about the journalists on this podcast, subscribe to our weekly podcast newsletter at onepitch.co/podcasts. We'll see you next week, but until then, start great stories.